There is a quiet kind of exhaustion that rarely shows on the surface. It lives beneath held breaths, steady voices, and the practiced calm of someone who has learned to be the anchor in every storm. People depend on them, the reliable one, the strong one, the one who never seems to shatter. And so they carry the weight with a steadiness that feels noble, until one day it becomes heavy in ways no one sees. There is a dark side to becoming the person everyone depends on. Not dramatic, not loud, just a slow erosion of one's inner world, hidden behind competence and kindness. And yet, in that unseen space, something profoundly human is unfolding, the longing to be held with the same softness they offer to others. There's a moment in every dependable person's life when they finally notice the weight they've been carrying. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It gathers slowly, like dusk settling over a familiar landscape. Soft, inevitable, almost unnoticed until the darkness feels fuller than the light. For years they have been the one others turn to, the voice of calm during uncertainty, the steady presence when things fall apart, the quiet problem solver who absorbs chaos without complaint. People don't ask whether they can handle it. They simply assume they do. And so the role forms like a second skin. At first it feels meaningful. Someone needs help, so they help. Someone is hurting, so they comfort. Someone is overwhelmed, so they step in, smoothing the edges of the world so others can breathe again. But somewhere along the way, the meaning shifts. The acts of kindness become routine, expected, assumed. Support becomes obligation, and the dependable person begins to realize that their ability to carry so much has slowly made their own needs disappear in the eyes of those around them. Not because people are selfish, but because reliability, once demonstrated, is easy to rely on. It often begins with small compromises. A tired "it's fine" when something is not fine. A swallowed truth because someone else's feelings seem more fragile than their own. A quiet sigh that gets replaced with a practiced smile. Over time, they stop being seen as someone who might need help. They become the constant, the solution, the calm, the caretaker. Someone whose strength is mistaken for invulnerability. And so their exhaustion grows in the shadows, invisible, unacknowledged, often even to themselves. This chapter is about that very moment of recognition, the instant the dependable person senses the imbalance. When they begin to notice the subtle heaviness in their chest after a long conversation where they held space for everyone but themselves. When they hear the familiar sentence, "You're so strong," and instead of pride, it lands like another stone added to the growing pile. They start to see how rarely anyone asks them how they truly feel, how seldom they are allowed to crack, to falter, to be uncertain, how often they silence their own inner world to make room for someone else's. There is no resentment yet, just a quiet, aching awareness. An awareness that being the person everyone depends on has come at a cost, the gradual fading of their own emotional gravity. In the stillness of late nights, when the noise of others has settled, they feel something inside them whispering for recognition. A small voice they've ignored for years. A fragile truth that trembles at the edges of their carefully constructed strength. This is not burnout. Not yet. It is the realization that their strength, once a choice, has become an identity, and their identity has become a cage. This recognition is the first crack in the armor, a subtle shift where they no longer feel honored by the role, but burdened by it, where the praise they receive feels strangely hollow, as if it celebrates only the parts of them that are useful, not the parts that are human. And in that quiet awareness, something begins to unravel. Not a breakdown, just a deepening understanding of the truth. No one can carry everything forever. Even the strongest person eventually feels the weight. Even the most dependable heart longs for someone to lean on. And somewhere inside, the dependable one begins to wonder, who holds me when I am the one holding everyone else? The story of becoming the dependable one rarely starts in adulthood. Dependability is not a sudden decision. It is a shape carved slowly over years, often beginning long before a person understands what it means to carry emotional weight. It usually starts in childhood, in places where the emotional climate requires someone to grow up a little faster. It may begin with a family that needed stability, parents who were overwhelmed, siblings who needed guidance, or a household where emotions flowed unpredictably. In such environments, a child often becomes the quiet observer, learning to read moods, manage tension, and anticipate needs. Some grow up understanding that peace is something you create, that harmony comes from swallowing one's own discomfort, that love is earned by being useful, calm, and unproblematic. For others, the role forms out of love. They see a parent struggling and instinctively step into the gaps. They offer comfort not because they must, but because they care deeply, and caring becomes their defining trait. And then there are those who were praised early for being mature, responsible, so easy, so helpful. Children who internalized the smiles and relief of adults as proof that their worth lay in how much they could hold. Over time, these early roles become habits. Habits become personality, and personality becomes destiny. By adolescence, they are the friend everyone confides in, the student teachers trust, the one who gives advice long before they learn to ask for any themselves. By adulthood, the pattern is fully formed. Being dependable feels comfortable, familiar, even safe. They know their role. They know how to bring calm to chaos. They know how to keep the peace, how to listen deeply, how to be the grounding presence others need. But what's rarely acknowledged is the hidden cost of these origins. The dependable one never learned to express their own needs because they were never the focus of the emotional spotlight. No one taught them how to be held, how to be vulnerable, how to ask, how to break without fear. They learned that their feelings were secondary, background noise in the larger story of supporting others. These childhood patterns shape the architecture of adulthood. The dependable one becomes someone others seek out, someone trusted to remain steady even in moments when nothing feels steady inside. Dependability becomes a shield, a role, a refuge, but also a quiet trap. No one ever told them that being strong could become its own kind of loneliness. That reliability, when unbalanced, might one day separate them from their own emotional truth. In truth, the beginnings of dependability are almost always rooted in love, responsibility, or survival. But its consequences reach far beyond childhood. By the time they realize the pattern, the role has been reinforced for years by family, friends, partners, colleagues. It isn't just something they do, it's who they are, or at least who everyone believes them to be. This chapter reveals that becoming the dependable person is rarely an accident. It is shaped by early dynamics, reinforced by praise, and solidified through repetition. But beneath all of those layers is a human truth. They became dependable because someone, at some point, needed them to be. And once a person learns to be what others need, it takes years to understand what they themselves have needed all along. Dependability is often celebrated as a virtue, but psychologically, it is also a complex pattern with deep roots in attachment, emotional regulation, and identity formation. At its core, dependability is linked to people-pleasing behavior, an adaptive strategy developed when a person internalizes the idea that their emotional safety depends on keeping others stable. This pattern is not weakness, it is a form of relational intelligence. The nervous system learns to scan for emotional shifts, anticipate needs, and respond in ways that maintain harmony. Neuroscience explains this through the brain's reward system. When someone helps, listens, or soothes another person, the brain releases oxytocin and dopamine. These neurochemicals reinforce the behavior, embedding it as a natural response. Over time, a dependable person becomes neurologically wired to regulate others before regulating themselves. Attachment theory offers another layer. People who grew up managing emotional unpredictability may develop anxious or earned secure attachment patterns, styles that prioritize connection and stability, sometimes at the cost of personal needs. Helping others becomes a way of maintaining closeness, reducing tension, and avoiding conflict. Then there is role fusion, a psychological process where identity becomes intertwined with function. Instead of being seen as a multifaceted person, the dependable one is viewed primarily through one lens: stability. And humans, by nature, internalize the roles they are repeatedly assigned. As this identity forms, the brain normalizes self-sacrifice. It stops registering their own needs as urgent. It quiets discomfort. It numbs exhaustion. This is not repression, it is adaptation, a way of preserving connection and predictability. But adaptation has limits. The dependable person often develops emotional compression, a phenomenon where feelings are pushed inward because there is no safe place to release them. Over time, this creates fatigue, not just of the body, but of the psyche. Another key factor is overfunctioning, the tendency to assume responsibility for others' emotions, decisions, or crises. Overfunctioning creates an imbalance. One person carries more than their share, while others unconsciously step back. Psychologists note that overfunctioners typically pair with underfunctioners, creating relational dynamics that reinforce the dependable role even further. At a deeper level, there is the concept of self-worth dependency. For some, being needed becomes synonymous with being valued. Their identity is validated through usefulness. The fear is not of giving too much, it is of not giving enough. This creates a persistent tension. The dependable one seeks connection through service, but in doing so, becomes emotionally invisible. The brain adapts to this invisibility by dulling self-recognition. It becomes easier to support others than to acknowledge the ache within. Yet beneath all this psychology lies a simple truth. Dependability is not a flaw. It is a survival strategy turned into a personality trait, a kindness shaped into a responsibility, a strength carried long after it stopped being sustainable. This chapter offers the scientific lens not to diagnose, but to understand. Dependability is not born from weakness, but from sensitivity, attunement, and early necessity. But what the brain learns, it can also unlearn. What identity absorbs, it can eventually release. And what once kept someone safe can, in time, become a cage they slowly learn to step out of. Inside every dependable person, there is a quiet war, a tension between who they are and who they have been asked to be, a longing for rest and a fear of what might fall apart if they take it. This chapter explores that invisible conflict, the part that rarely gets spoken aloud. On one side, there is the desire to remain reliable. Dependability is woven into their identity. They take pride in being stable, capable, present. They know what it feels like when someone relies on them, and they do not want to disappoint or burden others. On the other side, there is exhaustion, a deep, bone-level tiredness that no sleep can fix. A longing to be held, understood, cared for, without earning it, without justifying it, without having to prove they deserve it. This internal struggle creates an emotional double bind. If they continue to be strong, they feel alone. If they show weakness, they fear becoming a problem. So they continue forward, balancing between longing and fear, support and silence. There is also resentment, although they rarely admit it. Not anger at people, but at the imbalance, at the way their needs remain unspoken, while others freely express theirs. The dependable person wonders why no one notices their quiet sighs, their hesitations, the tremble in their voice on particularly heavy days. Yet when someone does offer help, they often pull back. They say, "It's okay," even when it isn't. The role is too familiar, the vulnerability too foreign. This is the paradox. They crave support, but resist receiving it. They long for softness, but fear dependency. They want to be understood, yet hide their true feelings to avoid discomfort. The guilt that follows is its own kind of weight. Guilt for feeling tired, guilt for wanting something back, guilt for not being endlessly generous, guilt for being, in the smallest ways, human. The dependable one often imagines a moment where someone will simply notice, where they won't need to ask, where their tiredness will be seen without explanation. But life rarely unfolds that way. People see the surface, the calm voice, the steady presence, and assume everything beneath it is equally steady. The dependable one becomes a mystery even to themselves. They begin to ask, why is it so difficult to rest? Why does saying no feel like betrayal? Why does asking for help feel like crossing a line that cannot be uncrossed? This chapter unveils that the greatest resistance does not come from others, but from within. There is fear of losing identity, fear of disappointing people, fear of appearing selfish, fear of unraveling, fear that if they stop holding everything, they will lose their place in the world. And yet, beneath all these fears lies a profound truth. The dependable person is tired of being strong alone. This hidden conflict becomes a turning point, not because it leads directly to change, but because it reveals the emotional cost of maintaining the facade. Only when someone acknowledges the war inside themselves can they begin to imagine a life where strength and softness coexist. A moment eventually arrives, subtle, quiet, but unmistakably different. The dependable person, often without planning to, lets the mask slip. It rarely happens during a dramatic event. More often, it occurs on an ordinary day, during a conversation that feels familiar, with a person who assumes they can lean without limit. Maybe the dependable one hears themselves say, "I'm fine," and suddenly realizes the words feel hollow. Maybe they try to offer support and feel an unexpected heaviness, a resistance they cannot push through. Maybe something small, an unanswered message, a casual dismissal, lands deeper than it should, revealing a long-ignored truth. This is the moment of clarity. They can't keep doing this, not in the same way, not at the same cost. It is not a breakdown. It is a quiet recognition that the persona they've worn for years no longer fits. It has stretched too thin. It has concealed too much. In this turning point, they begin to see themselves not as the unshakable figure they've always been, but as a human being, someone with limits, needs, exhaustion, vulnerability. And this realization is terrifying, but it is also liberating. For the first time, they allow the thought, maybe I am carrying too much. Maybe this is more than anyone should bear. Maybe being strong has come at the expense of my own emotional truth. The dependable one does not suddenly collapse. Instead, they become aware of cracks that have always been there. They notice how often they swallow discomfort, how deeply they yearn for someone to ask how they are, how desperately they want permission to be imperfect. This awareness brings sadness. Sadness for the years spent hiding. Sadness for the parts of themselves they ignored. Sadness for the version of strength they believed they had to embody. But with sadness comes clarity. They begin to understand that strength is not the absence of need. It is the courage to acknowledge it. That reliability should not require erasure. That being the person everyone depends on should not mean losing the right to lean. In this newfound clarity, something shifts inward. The dependable one sees, perhaps for the first time, the child they once were, the one who learned to carry emotional weight long before they had the capacity for it. And they feel compassion for that child, compassion for the adult they became, compassion for the exhaustion they can no longer deny. The turning point is not dramatic. It is quiet, internal, and deeply human. A soft sentence forms in the back of their mind. I want something different. Not less responsibility, but more balance. Not less strength, but more truth. Not less giving, but more receiving. This realization marks the beginning of an internal transformation. Not because everything changes immediately, but because they finally admit that something needs to change. The mask slips, the role softens, and for the first time, they see a future where dependability is not a burden, but a shared experience, where being needed does not require losing themselves. Healing for the dependable one does not begin with bold declarations or dramatic boundaries. It begins with subtle shifts, quiet acknowledgements, gentle pauses, small acts of self-recognition. The process is not linear. It unfolds slowly, like a soft unfolding of a truth long buried beneath layers of responsibility. The first step is noticing their own fatigue without immediately dismissing it. Noticing when they say yes too quickly. Noticing when they feel resentment, sadness, or overwhelm. Noticing their own humanity without judgment. Then comes permission. Permission to feel tired. Permission to take space. Permission to acknowledge needs they once silenced. Permission to be someone who experiences limits. This permission is not granted by others. It is granted inwardly, often with hesitation. As the dependable one starts allowing room for their own emotional reality, something inside them softens. They begin to understand that they deserve gentleness, not because they are strong, but because they are human. Healing also involves unlearning. Unlearning the belief that asking for help is an inconvenience. Unlearning the reflex to fix everything. Unlearning the habit of prioritizing others to the point of invisibility. Unlearning the instinct to equate worth with usefulness. Slowly, they start experimenting with vulnerability. Not big confessions, but small truths. I'm a bit overwhelmed today. I don't have the energy right now. Can this wait? I need a moment. At first, these words feel foreign, like speaking a language they never learned fully. But with time, they become more natural, more honest, more integrated. They begin exploring relationships in new ways, seeking people who ask how they are not out of obligation, but genuine care. People who offer support without being prompted. People who see them not just as dependable, but as dimensional. Healing also means accepting that some relationships may shift. When they stop over-functioning, others may feel unsettled. But this discomfort is part of recalibrating dynamics that were never truly balanced. And through this recalibration, the dependable one begins to build a new kind of strength, one rooted not in sacrifice, but in reciprocity. Not in silence, but in authenticity. Not in carrying everything, but in acknowledging what they can no longer hold alone. Integration is the final phase. This is where they learn to be strong and vulnerable at the same time, where dependability becomes a choice, not an identity, where helping others becomes something they want to do, not something they must do. They begin to understand that healing is not abandoning their compassionate nature. It is honoring it in a way that includes themselves. And slowly, they return to themselves, not the version shaped by early necessity or external praise, but the version that has always existed beneath the armor. The dependable one learns, finally, that being human is not a flaw. It is the most sustainable form of strength. In the gentle space that follows healing, something quiet and profound emerges. The dependable one begins to let go, not of people, nor of their capacity to care, but of the belief that they must carry everything alone. Letting go does not look like a sudden release. It is a soft unwinding, a loosening of the grip on expectations that were never theirs to hold, a slow dissolving of the pressure that once defined them. In this quiet, they learn to sit comfortably in their own presence. They discover the delicate balance between giving and receiving, between being strong and being open, between supporting others and allowing themselves to be supported. They begin to understand that relationships are meant to be exchanges, not one-sided acts of endurance. That care is most meaningful when it flows both ways. That tenderness is not something to reserve for others alone. In letting go, they reclaim their humanity. There are moments now when they laugh a little more easily, when they say no without guilt, when they admit to being tired, uncertain, emotional, and instead of crumbling, the world around them adjusts. Letting go becomes an act of trust. Trust that they do not need to hold everything together for life to remain whole. Trust that people can manage their own emotions. Trust that they are worthy even when they are not the one saving the day. In this stillness, they reconnect with parts of themselves they once silenced. The part that longs for softness, the part that enjoys being cared for, the part that feels joy without earning it, the part that simply exists, unapologetically and fully. And with this reconnection comes a sense of peace. Not the peace they once created for others, but a deeper, internal peace, one that comes from finally honoring their own emotional truth. They no longer seek strength in carrying everything. They find strength in being real, in expressing limits, in trusting that the people who matter will stay even when they are not endlessly reliable. This is not the end of their story. It is the beginning of a different one. A story where dependability is a shared experience, where care flows in both directions, where strength is defined not by how much they hold, but by how gently they hold themselves. In the quiet of letting go, they discover that being needed is not what gives them value. Being human does. And as they step into this new chapter, something inside them finally exhales. A long-held breath released into the possibility of a life where they are no longer the person everyone depends on, but a person who belongs fully in the world they have spent years holding together.